bacterial pigment. And what's special about this pseudomembrane is that it will bleed when scraped off, and so defects. And so the effects can extend into the larynx and the trachea, and then cause lymphadenopathy. So what's interesting about this is that it's going to give a bull's neck appearance on the patient, and this happens if the effects of this pseudomembrane extend into the larynx and the trachea. So you can remember the bull's neck appearance by thinking about the bull exposing his large neck as shown over here. And then this can cause obstruction, and then systemic effects can occur once the toxin reaches systemic circulation, and these effects include cardiac and nerve damage. So this is very dangerous and needs to be prevented at all costs. So for the disease, the diphtheria presents with a sore throat with pseudomembrane, bull neck, potential respiratory obstruction. Again, from this extension of the pseudomembrane into the larynx and the trachea, and ultimately the bull's neck formation. So in addition to that respiratory obstruction, there can be cardiac effects of myocarditis, arrhythmia, and heart block if the infection becomes systemic. You can remember these possibilities by thinking about the matador's heart-shaped cape, as shown over here. And then the nerve damage can also occur, such as the recurrent laryngeal nerve palsy, along with the lower limb polyneuritis. And you can remember these by thinking about the man in the crowd eating sausage links to represent the myelinated nerves. So here is a man eating the sausage links. Notice how the shape of this sausage link is shaped like the myelin wrapped around the nerve axon. And that can lead to these recurrent laryngeal nerve palsy and lower limb polyneuritis. For diagnosis, this bacteria is special because you can use this thing called the ELIC test